Everyone, I want to echo what Katie said, that it's such a beautiful day. So I really appreciate you spending some time here to see this presentation and hopefully ask questions and have some dialogue about it. My name is Amanda Ward. I'm an NBCT in AYA Social Studies History. I'm a teacher at Bainbridge High School, where I teach part-time social studies, and then I'm a part-time instructional coach as well. And this year I've been serving as a Hope Street Group National Teacher Fellow, and I'll talk a little bit about that organization and what that has meant in terms of being a fellow. Is my screen showing, Katie?
Yep, we look to be good to go.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is what I thought we could just cover. I'll give you a little bit of background on Hope Street Group and, like I said, the fellowship as well, and then talk a little bit about the focus that we had in this fellowship and the research project that we conducted and why we focused on teacher preparation, and then some highlights of the report, and then recommendations that came out of the report, and then whether it's during this presentation or afterwards, I'd love to give you some questions to think about and certainly have some discussion too. So Hope Street Group is an organization that it's a national organization. It's nonpartisan, nonprofit, and they focus on, as this slide talks about, just like pressing issues, they say, facing the U.S. So mainly their areas of focus are education, healthcare, and jobs. The most robust area of the Hope Street Group, though, is education. And in the realm of education, they're really focused on teacher leadership and teacher voice, and providing teachers with that opportunity, in particular, to share their voices and thoughts on education policy, whether that's at the federal level or at the state level. So this year, in the 2015-2016 school year, there were 18 different fellows who you can see on the screen here, who came from a variety of different locations. And the fellowship, I thought I would tell you a little bit. I found out about this fellowship actually because I think Marin Johnson is one of the participants tonight, but she, through WEA Olympic, she piloted this teacher leadership academy last spring, and C-STEP sponsors of that as well. And in that academy, we looked at the ideas of different leadership kind of realms, and that was association leadership, policy leadership, and instructional leadership. And I had done some association leadership, and I was going to be an instructional coach, and was trying out instructional leadership, but I was really my interest was piqued in terms of policy leadership. And so I saw this announcement come through that Hope Street Group was offering this national policy leadership kind of fellowship program. And so I thought I would apply and try it out. And so I was one of the people selected. And in this fellowship, they really, at the national level, are working on providing teachers with some training just on, I'd say, just various leadership skills, how to interact with different policymakers, media, etc., and then also with a real focus on influencing education policy. And in the past, the National Teacher Fellows for Hope Street Group focused on independent projects at the state level. But this year, they decided that they wanted to try something different and have the fellows all work together on a national research project. And so that's what all the people on the screen there, we worked together on a project collectively rather than kind of individual projects. So as I said, there were 18 of us. We came from actually 16 states and then the District of Columbia. You'll also notice that on this slide, there are some states that are in italics. So Hawaii, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Tennessee. Those are the states that have state fellowship programs. So Hope Street Group offers this national fellowship, but also state fellowship programs. And those fellows also were involved with this research project as well. So in the fall of 2015, the fellows and I conducted this, basically worked on this research project where we conducted focus groups. And we also worked with, in terms of our focus groups, some of them were in person, Some of them were virtual. We also sent out surveys to teachers. And all of this data collection was to try to hear from classroom teachers about their experiences in teacher preparation and how that translated in terms of their actual preparation for the realities of the classroom. So that begs the question of like, why teacher preparation? Why was that the focus of our research project? And Hope Street Group, I think, wanted a project. They were looking for this research project that would be led by teachers, where teachers were, it was teacher voices that were heard. And the Hope Street Group contacted and worked in collaboration with the Department of Education and kind of talked to the Department of Education about what were some areas that they were interested in hearing from teachers about. And one of the things that came up was teacher preparation. And they were curious about whether, do teachers feel like the preparation they receive, whether it's in undergraduate programs or graduate programs, et cetera, whatever preparation they received, did it translate to actually feeling prepared for the realities of what classroom teaching is all about? And if not, what were the areas that could be improved? And so once the idea was teacher preparation, Hope Street Group also talked with AACTE, which is the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education. And they talked with that organization about, you know, what would they think of this type of a research project. And they were actually very interested in it. And there were some national fellows ultimately that went to the AACTE National Conference in February to present the findings and recommendations. So we gained input from both of those organizations about potential focus group questions. So what would they want to hear from teachers about so that ultimately the research could be beneficial to them? So that was one reason why we went with teacher preparation. Another was that if this teacher preparation is a common experience for all, you know, for classroom teachers, and education policy can vary so dramatically from state to state, but teacher preparation is a common experience that we all went through at some point, whether it, like I said, it was undergraduate or graduate or Teach for America. And so that was something that could bring all of us together. And then the other thing that I think influenced it too was this idea of teacher shortages has been getting a lot of press in the past couple of years. And certainly there's concern about the fact that a lot of young people or people who are thinking about entering the profession, they just aren't entering the profession to the degree that they used to. They're not attracted to the field. But another thing that's been coming out, I think, through research is that, and some people, journalists have highlighted in some articles like in the New York Times, so that with the attrition rate being what it is, that if you know, we had better attrition rates in education, maybe there wouldn't be as much of an issue with teacher shortages. And so part of the question was, you know, does teacher preparation play a role in these attrition rates? Is it part of the reason people are leaving because they just aren't feeling as prepared as they should? So that was kind of the whole impetus behind this, and the big question is just, are we, whether that, and we is broader, I think, more than just universities and preparation programs, but are we in the education community preparing teachers for the realities of the 21st century classroom? So with that in mind, we really wanted to meet people where they were in terms of trying to get teachers involved and reaching out to teachers in a variety of different ways. So like I said, their focus groups were one way that we did that, and for some people the focus group was in person, and for other teachers we did virtual focus groups. We also distributed surveys in order to get teachers involved, because for some that was a better avenue than the focus group. So ultimately, all of this led to this research report called On Deck that provided policy recommendations. And really the recommendations, the policy recommendations were directed at the Department of Education and AACTE. But I think that they can really be used probably more broadly than that. But in March, the fellows and I traveled to Washington, D.C., and we presented the recommendations from the report to our congressional representatives and senators, and then we also met with the Department of Education to go over the report and show them what we had found and what teachers had said. So ultimately, there were almost 2,000 teachers from 49 of the 50 states who shared their voices on this issue of teacher preparation. And in terms of the demographics, whether it's for gender, as you can see on this slide, or for ethnicity, which you can see on this slide, the demographics mirror what makes up the teaching population. So here are the focus group questions that we asked, and these are the same questions that were on the surveys as well. And they were intended to be open-ended in order to give people the opportunity to really share their experiences in kind of more anecdotal way. So the first question was, did your preparation program offer any specific courses related to serving in areas of high need or persistently low achieving populations? And if so, which courses were offered and how did they help prepare you? So that was one of the questions. Another question was, as you reflect on your preparation to be a teacher, what do you wish you had more of in terms of pedagogy? And in addition to pedagogy, what skills do you need to be a good teacher? Another was about college and career readiness, and just have the new college and career ready standards changed your instructional practices, and to what extent your preparation prepare you to make such changes. And then if your state was going to evaluate teacher preparation programs, which measures should be included? Teacher retention rates, teacher job placement, graduation rates. As a side note, one thing that you all should know that's important is that in the state of Washington, we are ahead of most places. The Professional Educator Standards Board this year has been piloting different indicators and talking about different indicators that they think should be used in the evaluation of teacher preparation programs. And that's not true of most states. There are a lot of states where they're not nearly at that point yet. So we're ahead of most places. And then the question was, what would you change about teacher preparation for the next generation of teachers? So kind of a catch-all question for people to share their ideas about topics that hadn't come up maybe from the other questions. So the findings in terms of what did people say about those questions, these were kind of the key findings from the teachers who shared their voices from across the country. One really important finding was that half of teachers, one out of two teachers, received no coursework related to high needs populations. So it was a significant number of teachers said that they didn't have any sort of direct, explicit instruction on high need populations. And just earlier this year, there was a lot of press on the fact that a majority of public school students now are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So it's definitely important to note that teachers that's the reality, that there are this large number of our population that we're working with in public schools that are high need, and yet a lot of people are not feeling like they receive the preparation they need to work with kids in poverty. And that doesn't even encompass, obviously, the high needs population also includes like special education, ELL. There can be lots of different high needs populations. So this definitely was an area that teachers feel like they need more training in. So that was one of the key findings of the report. Another finding related to college and career ready standards. And one thing that was interesting is that for that particular question, the answers that people had really varied on their level of experience. So for teachers who were recent graduates of an education program, they felt like they had received some instruction on whether it was Common Core standards or some other standards that their state had adopted. They felt like they had been prepared and that had been something that had been part of their coursework to some degree. For veteran teachers, though, they said that really it was on the job that they had to learn these new standards. So that's another finding that maybe is sort of somewhat intuitive. And then another finding of the report just had to do with the types of in-class and clinical experiences that teachers wanted to have. Many felt like they didn't have enough instruction and experience with classroom management. Overwhelmingly, lots of people said they really wish they had had more time in classrooms. And then differentiation, coursework on differentiation, any sort of content-based courses, and then development, whether you're talking about child development or adolescent development, depending on the level that a teacher is at. So this was maybe not surprising, but that was something that really came out with teachers saying they wanted more in these particular areas, and they really wanted the opportunity for application, not just coursework, but blending theory with practice. So another finding was, the question asked about how should teacher preparation programs be evaluated, and this is kind of how it broke down in terms of what teachers thought in terms of how teacher preparation programs should be evaluated. And so they thought that the most important measure was just teacher retention, that a teacher preparation program should be evaluated based on if their graduates are sticking in the profession. And then other areas were job placement and to what degree people were graduating from these programs, teacher effectiveness, and then the actual curriculum itself, the amount of time people spent in classrooms in the program, and then feedback from teachers, regular feedback from their graduates on how well prepared they felt. So those were kind of the findings, and then out of those findings came recommendations, like I said, for policymakers, specifically like the Department of Education and AACTE. But these also, while this is directed federally, it's certainly at the state level, it has a lot of implications as well, and I would say even at the district level. So one recommendation was to have teacher preparation programs adopt a common curriculum so that regardless of where you were getting your teacher preparation, that there be a basic level of coursework that all teachers would get. And that part of that should be understanding standards, but also preparation for high needs populations and basic coursework in classroom management. So there should really be a similar experience regardless of where a teacher earns their teaching credentials. Another kind of related to this, a lot of teachers in focus groups just talked about, as I said, the need for hands-on experience. And they wanted that differentiation. They want communication and collaboration skills and the opportunity to develop their communication and collaboration skills. They wanted more training and hands-on experience in diversity and multicultural awareness. And classroom management, and so all of those different courses or areas of study, like differentiation and collaboration and communication skills and adolescent development and classroom management, etc. All of those align with EdTPA, which might be something that's familiar to you if you're a recent graduate of a teacher preparation program. But if not, EdTPA is a requirement of many teacher preparation programs for their graduates now. So more than 600 teacher preparation programs in 40 states require their graduates to complete EdTPA, which is a portfolio of materials that teachers, pre-service teachers, have to collect during their student teaching experience. And it includes things like lesson plans, and they have to film themselves and analyze the film. And all of that is to demonstrate their readiness to teach. So in some ways, some people say it feels somewhat similar, or the concept to national board certification, that that's part of their process. And EdTPA was something that was developed at Stanford University, but like I said, it's now something that's used by many different programs in 40 states. So that was something else that people thought, that sometimes EdTPA can be criticized, but for teachers whose programs really align, their courses align with EdTPA, they felt like that was positive, and so that was something that came out of the recommendations too, was just trying to align courses with these skills that teachers are saying are really important and are a part of EdTPA anyway. So another recommendation, and this is one I think we hear a lot of times from teachers, is just there needs to be increased clinical teaching programs and more hands-on experience. And for many teachers in the focus groups and surveys, they said the best part of their teacher preparation was their student teaching. This aligns with lots of research that's been done. Many different research studies have shown that that's what teachers say is necessary. But it's not just more time, but also experienced mentors. And a lot of people talked about how, there's student teaching experience, and you might feel like this as well, really dependent on your mentor. And if you had an experienced, really proficient mentor, it made a huge difference in your experience. And another thing that came out of this too, of the recommendations, is just that teachers, pre-service teachers, need to have an opportunity to also work in diverse areas and work with high needs populations and get some of that hands-on experience with a mentor who can assist them as they're kind of learning. And then a third recommendation just had to do with the need to really look at teacher retention and job placement when thinking about teacher preparation programs. And this is an area where I think it starts to slide into the fact that we need to be looking at teacher preparation beyond just university programs, but also most people say the first 3 years of teaching. Those are considered kind of new to the profession teachers, and that districts have a part to play in this too. And that the type of support that you can receive from a district early on can really make a difference in terms of attrition as well. And so one of our recommendations had to do with teacher leadership pathways. And not only do those need to be available at districts, but that programs should be teaching teachers about that as well. Because it seems that today's generation of teachers aren't looking for a teaching position that they'll be in for the next 35 years. But they'd like to know what are some of the other options of things they could move into down the road when, if and when they are interested and ready for that. Another area was just this idea of having programs and having districts support the idea of growth of practice, and that certainly fits with national board certification, making sure that programs are emphasizing that. We also found that exit interviews and following up with graduates seem very important to teachers, and giving teachers the opportunity at different segments in time to say whether they felt prepared by their teacher preparation program. So whether it's like a year and then maybe a few years after that and a few years after that, to provide feedback to teacher preparation programs. So all of those things were some of our recommendations for Department of Education to consider, but also AACTE when they're thinking about what they want to require of their member programs and member universities. And as I said too, when looking at this slide and thinking about the ways in which teacher preparation programs are evaluated, the Professional Educator Standards Board has been looking at what they call indicators to consider when evaluating teacher preparation programs. So if this is something that you're interested in, you should definitely consider following what the Professional Educator Standards Board has been up to this year and is moving into next year. Because in our state, this has definitely been, I think, a topic of conversation at that level, but one in which I don't think a lot of teachers are aware of. So I wanted to first allow the chance for any sort of questions that you have about any of the information that I presented, and then I just had a couple of questions for you to maybe consider or talk about related to how this information might be something that you can bring back to your district, your building, so that goes beyond just the federal policy or state policy level.
This is Katie, and I want to remind you again that you are welcome to use the chat for your questions, and I'll monitor them and read them out loud to Amanda, or you can certainly unmute yourself and ask your question yourself. And I know that we have to have the awkward webinar wait time, as always happens.
I was waiting on the wait time, thinking, just wait a second.
Exactly, and then wait another beat because it's taking that long on somebody's connection. One question I had, Amanda, as I was listening to you go through this, I know there was no official stance on residency or non-residency programs, but residency programs are getting a lot of attention, and it does seem to be that the Department of Ed is looking favorably on those. From what you heard and the research that you saw, what's your sense about how residency programs may be poised to live up to the recommendations for teacher prep?
So I would say that they're definitely poised, and I think that a lot of teachers, if you talk to them, they would say, "Oh yes, that's what we need, more residency programs." I think one thing that's just interesting when thinking about policies, when I applied for this fellowship and then started working on these different projects, I had taught AP government for 13 years, and so I had taught my students for so long to say, like, well, when it comes to education policy, the place you really make a difference is at state level. It's not at the federal level. The majority of education policy is all about the states. So I think that Department of Education certainly has been supportive of it, but ultimately, I don't see the Department of Education can make recommendations, they can make suggestions, but ultimately, I think really the place where we could see movement on that is if states took a strong stand. Probably more than the federal government, just because I don't see them probably coming up with any sort of really strict standards, and they also just don't have the funding abilities that, again, when it comes to education spending, the majority of that's happening at the state level. But I do think that those types of programs are poised and ready, because there's been so much press recently about teacher shortages, teachers not being prepared, the need to elevate the profession, the fact that the way that doctors really changed the way they were looked at was by having residency programs and moving into having their internships that lasted for long periods of time. But all of it comes back to money too, and ultimately, unfortunately, teachers aren't paid the way that doctors are paid, and so for a couple of years being an intern in the medical field and not being paid a lot, I think then they have the chance to make up for that later, and that doesn't exist as it stands now in teaching. But I do think that those programs have gotten a lot more press, and like the Gates Foundation is setting up these teacher preparation centers, and so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But definitely from the conversations we have with teachers, that was something that they were very supportive of and saw as definitely being a positive avenue if we could see more movement that way.
Great, thank you. We had a question in the chat box from Pam about how the recommendations were received by policymakers, and to your knowledge, are there any plans for states taking on the positions that you have mentioned?
So I think that for policymakers, when it comes to members of Congress, it was mixed. So I went to I met with a senior advisor to Patty Murray, and Patty Murray is, one of the bigwigs in the Senate when it comes to education policy. And they were very interested in the report, very interested in what teachers had to say, and so that was definitely supportive and interested. And I think there's some opportunity as ESSA is rolling out for there to be more. Just probably more recommendations than regulations, but at least more attention on teacher preparation. I also went to Derek Kilmer's office because he's my congressional representative. I met with his education person, and she was interested and supportive as well, but he's not on any education committees, and that's not really, well, education, of course, is an interest. Everybody talks about the importance of education. He's not on one of those education committees, so I didn't see as much probably movement there. Some of the other fellows there was one of the fellows is from Utah, and she had a number of people be interested, and ultimately they were talking about needing to have legislation passed that had to do with teacher preparation. And then there were other people who went to see their representatives and said there was complete disinterest, like a fellow that we have from Montana. So that was definitely varied. In terms of at the state level, I think that Christine Rolfes, who's one of the she's a Democrat on education committee in our state Senate, and she's my state senator. She was very interested in the recommendations of the report and the need to consider teacher preparation. Of course, at our state level, so much is focused on the McCleary case and the broken budget and So I think teacher preparation kind of takes a lesser interest. But she definitely was, I think, was interested in that. And teacher preparation tends to be something I think that can bring together people from all parties. It's not as partisan as some of the other education issues. And then I'd say I have provided the report to some preparation programs, like Seattle University, where I got my master's in teaching. They shared it with their professors and were very interested in what teachers had to say. And the National Educator Standards Board is like already down the road in terms of looking at how we should be evaluating teacher preparation programs in the state of Washington. So I think that I definitely think that there's an interest by policymakers. It's just that I think that other things oftentimes rise to the top above teacher preparation, like funding. But I also think that this is really something that we all should be taking more of an interest in, and we all could be doing more, not just looking at it as an issue for universities, but that if we were all stepping up, the whole landscape might look a little bit different.
Thanks, Amanda. Maren said that she has 3 questions, so I don't know if she wants to post them one by one or if she wants to activate her mic and ask them. But Maren, do you want to go ahead and pose your first question? And Maren, we can't hear you. So if you are asking your very good question, we can't hear it yet. So do you want to try again or maybe put it in the chat box? Because we'd love to hear from you.
There we go. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, so sorry about that. All right. So you said that one of the recommendations was for a common curriculum for teacher preparation. And I was wondering if the Hope Street Group Fellows and the respondents to your survey and to your focus groups were thinking about a common national curriculum or just a common curriculum within each state?
Well, I think that what the teachers wanted to, and obviously, like anytime, again, this could, like education policy would be a lot easier if it's just at the state level, because trying to get a federal curriculum adopted is complicated and maybe not necessarily of benefit, because education can look so different from state to state. But I think the idea was that, if you're graduating from a teacher preparation program today, shouldn't everyone have gotten some sort of instruction in differentiation? Shouldn't everyone have had some sort of, coursework on high needs populations? So I think that, the curriculum suggests, I think it's probably stronger than necessary. It's not like, oh, everybody would teach this, and this as part of differentiated instruction, and you'd all use this textbook, and you'd all do, but instead that there should be some common areas that everybody has gotten, if that makes sense. And I don't know that it's realistic, again, to think that you could do that at the national level, but I think the idea was from respondents that, yeah, everybody would have some sort of instruction in differentiated instruction. Some people would have some sort of instruction in collaboration skills, whatnot. And I think that there are lots of programs that do that already, but trying to ensure that everybody has those types of experiences.
Okay. And then, so thank you. And I have another question. And so you mentioned that one of the findings was that when teacher preparation is aligned to the EdTPA, the experience was more positive. And so I was wondering, what were some of the overall views of the EdTPA by the teachers in the focus groups and by Hope Street Group Fellows? I'm just wondering what some of the discussion was around the EdTPA.
So it was really interesting around EdTPA. Some people, didn't mind EdTPA and thought that it was a useful exercise for those people who had experienced it, and other people were very frustrated with EdTPA and didn't find it useful. And it seemed that some of that had to do with the way in which the program approached it and the degree to which the programs assisted pre-service teachers in gathering materials and completing the videos, and so to what degree they had like instruction and help with that. It seemed like from the focus groups and the surveys, the people who felt like their university really worked with them in support of this, that they found it a positive experience. But for other people, it was a frustrating one. So it made me think also about like national board certification, that people who feel like they're supported along the way feel like, oh, it's such a great experience and I have this chance to be, you know, reflective of my practice and so forth. And for others, it can be more frustrating, even though at the end they might say like, well, yeah, I mean, that's beneficial to do these things, but it was just overwhelming. So I don't know, it seemed like it had to do, part of the reaction to EdTPA had to do with the degree to which they were supported through the process by the university.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. All right, so my last question, when you had your list of criteria that might be used, and these, I believe, were criteria that you pulled from the focus groups and from the survey, one of the criteria was a measure of teacher effectiveness. And I'm wondering what sort of discussion there was around about which measures of teacher effectiveness might be used.
Yeah, that had definitely variations of so some people, I would say in general, like student test scores was from the focus groups and surveys and things that I sent out, that was not something that people, that was definitely like lightning rod. No, it shouldn't be about, you know, test scores from students. But there was some level, it's interesting because as teachers talked about it, there'd be some level where they'd say, well, we should have some measure of effectiveness. I mean, that should be part of it. But it was hard to find common agreement on what that would be. Like, oh, is that like in the state of Washington? Does it have to do with TPEP and what your TPEP scores are? But then how do you do that? Because those aren't things that are, I think, available to, just widely available. And so to me, it seemed like teachers wanted to have some measure of, they wanted schools to be held accountable, like, oh, are you producing effective teachers? But it was, I didn't see common agreement on what that measure would be.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
We have time for probably another question or two, and then I know that Amanda wanted to leave us with some thoughts and questions that we could consider in taking the work back to our own context. So let me leave it open for another question or two. Amanda, one question I wanted to pose, and this might segue into your next section, looking at the folks that we have on the webinar and other people who will be interested, you know, many of them mentor student teachers at a building level or at a district level. What do you think are the most salient pieces for them to take away from this that might also result in actionable items for them in their work with new teachers?
Well, that's definitely, like, that does kind of segue into what I was wanting people to think about. But I would say for people who, I think it's fantastic that there are people who are mentoring new teachers and mentoring pre-service teachers. And I think that and if you're one of those people, that's fantastic. And I think part of it, we need to get more people on board with doing that. And provide people with the recognition and compensation for doing that. I think that sometimes teachers might think like, oh, it would be nice to do, I should do that, but you know, it's such a hassle, and frankly, the teacher preparation programs, what teachers are paid is nothing. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like a few $100s, and what they're giving is so much more. And so I think one area I would hope that people would start to talk about and look at is just ways in which we can better compensate teachers, so that to encourage really effective teachers to mentor pre-service teachers and mentor new teachers, because that's so essential. And from a district perspective, it really makes sense, because 40% of student teachers end up staying in the district where they taught. So if school districts look at it that way, and with this issue with teacher shortages, particularly in areas like special education and math and science, if they look at really having effective teachers work with pre-service teachers and train them to be, to launch them off and be strong teachers from day one, now they can hire someone in their district who they know and who has been trained by an effective teacher. So I think that if you're already somebody who's mentoring teachers, maybe there's a conversation to start at the district level about how to get more people to do that, particularly in some of the high needs areas, and ways in which districts can recognize and compensate teachers who are willing to give their time, particularly since today teacher preparation programs are so focused on the co-teaching model, where that it's not something where you have a student teacher and you leave the room and are gone for 3 months or something, but that you're there really working with the teacher. So I think that's one area, and for people who aren't yet mentoring, to maybe consider that, particularly National Board Certified teachers, to see that as a leadership opportunity and a chance to kind of give back to the profession, so that we really are being intentional about placing our most effective teachers with new and pre-service teachers.
Great. There's a question from Nancy. If the quality of mentor is so important to training of new teachers, are there any efforts being made to more effectively select the mentor teachers?
Yeah, and I think that it depends on the district. It should be, I mean, we know that, we know from our own personal experience, and we know from research that, effective mentor teachers are really important, whether it's for those pre-service teachers or the teachers who are in their first 3 years of the profession. I think that some districts definitely recognize that and are very intentional about placing highly effective teachers with new teachers, and I think that others aren't. And so that's another area where that could be a leadership opportunity for people to go back to their districts and find out, is there a process? And if there's not, is that something that you could work on or create? Because it should be something that's intentional. And I think to defend this, I think for a lot of districts, they're overworked in the district office too, and so it's something that maybe they would like to have that happen, but just haven't had the chance. But I don't think that that's something that, it just really depends on the district whether that's occurring or not.
I want to also point out that at the OSPI website under Beginning Educator Support Team, their best work, there is a document titled Effective Support for New Teachers in Washington State, and it's basically induction standards. It's best practices in a comprehensive mentoring program where we take care of those newest to the profession. And there's an entire section on mentoring that could provide a district with some guidance about some selection or criteria they might use when choosing mentor teachers. Amy also had a question, is there a discussion about how we tend to place new teachers in the most difficult positions?
Yeah, and I think that's definitely, I think that's a discussion, and it should be a discussion, and kind of to relate back to what Katie was just saying, the best standards in there, the OSPI's best standards talk about how, new teachers shouldn't have, at the secondary level, they shouldn't have 3 preps, and they shouldn't have the most challenging classes, nor should people at the elementary level be with the class with the highest needs, or even teachers being placed in a school that's really high needs. Maybe the more experienced teachers should be there, and newer teachers should be at a less high needs area. So it's definitely a topic of conversation. I think just that the implementation doesn't always happen. But I do think that if you are interested in that and want to see your district be more intentional, going to the OSPI website and seeing the standards that Katie was just talking about are really helpful, because not only do they talk about what the standards are, but they have this evaluation tool for districts to use, and it's pretty sobering. When I first saw the document and brought it to my district office, it was sobering for them to see wow, we would be considered really basic on so many different levels, and to them it was a wake-up call on something that they wanted to change. So I think that that's a really helpful document, because it's not just you, it's this outside organization, it's OSPI saying this is what you should be doing. Also, if you go to their website, you'll see that they have events that they offer, and they offer free training for mentors as well. And I think that one of the few areas where the legislature actually increased funding was for the best mentoring program. And so they've offered grants to districts, and I think that they're planning on they'll be able to offer more grants to districts because of this increased funding.
Great. Yep, it was one of the most significant areas of increase. I want to give Amanda an opportunity to sort of give us some final thoughts and kind of close us out from the webinar this evening. So, Amanda, what else would you like us to know or take away from what you've learned in your experience?
Okay, well, we've kind of touched on it here, but one of the things that I wanted people to take this, I think oftentimes with like teacher prep, it can be easy to pass the buck and just say, well, it's a deal for policymakers or it's a deal for university programs. It really doesn't impact me. But when you start to think about teacher preparation, you realize, when you have the new teacher next door who's really well prepared, that makes a huge difference versus having like the teacher next door who is really, really struggling. And so if we can all see this as that we're a part of this also, and that we should be taking the opportunity to formally or informally mentor teachers, new to the profession, or be a mentor teacher to a pre-service teacher, even though it can be, a really time-consuming and it's not adequately compensated at this point in time. So trying to think about ways, or having your district, does your district have a mentoring program or an induction program? Because I think that's something that some districts cut when the recession hit, and some haven't come back on board with offering that. And is that an avenue where you could get more involved? So I think just thinking about like that second question on the screen about, what can you do at the local level, and whether it's like recruiting people, supporting people new to the profession, or even just helping to retain teachers. And thinking of the person maybe who's at their third year of teaching but is thinking of maybe this isn't the right thing for them. What are ways that you can support them and encourage them to stick with the profession? So I would just say, hopefully you're leaving with that thought of like, what are some things that you could do in your building or in your district to help with this issue of ensuring that teachers are well prepared for the realities of what teaching is like today in the 21st century. And what thinking about the action that you can take to ensure then that we don't have this shortage. And also, the better prepared we have teachers, then I think the less under attack we feel as a profession. Right now, it just feels like it's highly criticized. But if we have all these great, well prepared new teachers, it's hard to criticize an effective teacher. And I also wanted to just say, too, that if you have additional questions that come up as you're thinking about this, or if you're trying to, if you're looking for opportunities or ideas of how to bring some of these things to your district, feel free to contact me and email me. This year, this has definitely been like an area of passion for me, and so I, this year, was able to convince my district. We were a district where we don't, at the moment, intentionally place student teachers or new teachers. We didn't really have an induction program. I think that we had maybe had one 15 years ago, but I've been able to convince them that it's an area of importance. And so next year, part of my job is going to be something called teacher support, a teacher support specialist, where I'm working on how to attract teachers and induct teachers and then retain teachers, working on National Board facilitation and providing effective mentoring support, and working with student teachers to try to help them to come to our district and stay in our district. So I've done a lot of legwork working with my district office, and so if that's an area that you're interested in and you have ideas, or want to share ideas, or you want suggestions and things, I'd be more than happy to talk with you down the road.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise, Amanda, and the learning you did as a Hope Street Fellow. And thank you for all of you attendees for giving up a part of your Sunday evening to be here and learn. We know that probably the best leverage you have is in your context with your people. And remember that when you have the opportunity to interact with university folks as well, you are now armed with the induction standards and the recommendations from Hope Street as a way to start a conversation. So I'm going to turn off the recording recording. It'll take a couple days, but we will post the webinar, the recording of the webinar to C-STEP's website. So if that also gives you an opportunity to broaden your sphere of interest, we'll have that opportunity as well. So thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you all of you.
Thank you.
And we hope you have a great week.
Yes, thanks everyone.
Take care.
Okay, bye.